We begin this morning with escalating tensions between the U.S. and China after House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's trip to Taiwan. Today, Pelosi visited the Taiwanese legislature and she met with the island's president. Now, Beijing responded with military exercises. The White House's John Kirby joined CBS Mornings earlier today to discuss China's response and the future implications of the speaker's trip.
This is exactly what we expected the Chinese to do. We talked about this a couple of days ago. We expected them to conduct some exercises and to make some more bellicose rhetoric out there, to fly aircraft, of course, in and around the Taiwan Strait. So all of this is of a piece of what we expected the Chinese to do in terms of reaction. In terms of what goes on in the future here, we would again urge the Chinese not to escalate tensions any more than they already are, because there's no reason to. The trip is complete. It was completely consistent with our obligations under the Taiwan Relations Act and with our One China policy. So we urge the Chinese to look for opportunities to de-escalate the tensions and to keep the lines of communication open.
CBS News correspondent Adam Yamaguchi reports on this from Taiwan.
Good morning. Speaker Nancy Pelosi just wrapped up a whirlwind but potentially consequential visit to Taiwan. In the face of threats from China, she struck a defiant tone and emphasized that America would not abandon its commitment to Taiwan.
America's determination to preserve democracy here in Taiwan and around the world remains ironclad.
Meeting with Taiwanese President Tsai Ing-wen, Pelosi became the most senior U.S. official to visit Taiwan in 25 years. The Chinese Foreign Ministry called her trip a complete farce, warning that those who offend China will be punished. Shortly after the speaker landed, China announced plans for live-fire military drills in waters surrounding Taiwan, a move the Taiwanese said demonstrates an intention to destroy regional peace.
What matters to us is that we salute the successes of Taiwan. We work together for the security of Taiwan.
China claims the island as its territory and opposes any engagement by Taiwanese officials with foreign governments. Pelosi's last stop in Taiwan was the Museum of Human Rights. This is significant because human rights is something that is near and dear to her heart. She first sort of made a big name for herself in Tiananmen Square in China many years ago. This is clearly a message. But on the streets of Taipei, some locals express concern about how the visit will impact them. These two great countries fighting for power, he says. Taiwan is stuck in the middle. Taiwan is a small country. We have to try to survive. What happens tomorrow and beyond is the question many here are now asking. Will this highly scrutinized visit by the speaker be worth the potential consequences or punishments that China may decide to deal out to Taiwan?
Joining us now to discuss Pelosi's visit and other topics is former U.S. National Security Advisor, Ambassador John Bolton. Ambassador, good morning. What's your take on this trip?
Well, I think it was exactly the right thing to do. I think Pelosi was articulating longstanding U.S. policy. And I think the kind of hyperthyroid reaction of the Chinese government should be helpful to the American people in assessing exactly how over the top that government's policies are and how it is determined to assert hegemony in its periphery along the Indo-Pacific, and something that we're, I think, realizing kind of late. I think more and more people do understand it, but this is a teachable moment for us, watching how over the top the Chinese reaction is.
Well, let me ask you this. Those of us at home who haven't worked in the White House like you have, watched the president say, oh, no, the military really doesn't think she should go. Really a bad idea. But she went anyway. So was this just playing politics in front of the camera, but doing things behind the scenes to basically say, you got this, go ahead and go?
Well, I'm afraid it's the administration's reaction reflected the same confusion that it does in so many cases. If the president were really concerned about the trip, he could have told his longtime friend for 30 or 40 years, Nancy Pelosi, could have picked up the phone and said, Nancy, I really don't think you ought to go. There's no evidence that he did that. I think the administration is so consumed by the idea of negotiating with Beijing over climate change that it can't accept anything that might interfere with that. And this priority dominates China policy. I think what Pelosi's doing, as I say, is so unexceptional that it really reflects the mistake China's made to react the way that it has. There's no change in policy she's advocating. I would advocate more, but that's not what she's doing. She's simply reflecting existing American policy.
So China's got these responses with these military drills in the region. Is that what you would have expected? Do you expect something more that's maybe a little bit more frightening?
Well, frightening to whom? I mean,
people at home.
You had on earlier a White House spokesperson talking about rising tensions between the United States and China. I don't think there's any tension on our side. I think things are quite normal. I think it's in Beijing where the tension exists, and it may reflect their own concern about the example that Taiwan sets of having a free country that exercises democratic responsibility that's noticeably absent in Beijing. I think that's what Beijing is really afraid of.
Now, you want a military presence in Taiwan. You've said in that the past. Do you think that's a reality under this administration?
Well, I don't know what this administration is going to do. As I say, I find it very hard to understand their confusing actions and words. I think part of what we need to do here for greater peace and stability along China's Indo-Pacific is integrate Taiwan into more regional multilateral defense arrangements with Japan, with South Korea, with Australia, with India, with others. I think this is the best way to protect Taiwan over the long term and to restrain anyone in China who thinks that by bullying or blustering or trying to create artificial crises, that they can make Taiwan or any country in the region more vulnerable.
I'd like to move to Afghanistan. Your reaction to the killing of the al-Qaeda leader?
I beg your pardon. I didn't hear that part of the question.
I just want to get your reaction to the killing of al-Qaeda's leader, Ayman al-Zawahiri, in Afghanistan.
Well, I think it's long overdue. I wish we'd been able to do it before, but I congratulate everybody who's been involved in this effort over many, many years. He got exactly what he deserved.
What do you think the U.S. should do next in Afghanistan?
Well, I think the unfortunate news that accompanies the good news is that obviously Zawahiri thought he had it made in the shade. He abandoned his security precautions. He was living in the open in the house of a senior Haqqani network official in Kabul, the capital of Afghanistan. He obviously thought taking the sun every afternoon out on that porch put him in no danger at all. And I think what this really shows is the danger for the United States, for our friends, certainly for the people of Afghanistan, of the Taliban government, that contrary to their assurances, contrary to their agreement with the Trump administration, they are allowing foreign terrorists to take root in Afghanistan. Again, we had testimony some months back by senior Biden administration Pentagon officials that ISIS-K was going to be in a position to mount terrorist attacks. And that time has now come, that al-Qaeda itself would be soon thereafter in a position to mount terrorist attacks against the United States. That time is coming very soon. So that the decision to abandon our position in Afghanistan has left us more vulnerable here at home. And the very confidence that Zawahiri was demonstrating by being out in the open in Kabul shows, I think, how dangerous potentially the situation has become.
Ambassador John Bolton, thank you for the time, sir.
Thank you for having me.